by Linda Jackson at St Mark's Church, Victoria Street, Newtown, with Clifford Hayton on the 5th of August 2014. Cliff, could you just start by telling me your full name, date and place of birth?
Right, it's Clifford Hayton, number 6 Alexandra Crescent, Pemberton, Wigan. I was born in Newtown at number 46 Scott Lane on the 19th of August 1937.
Thank you. And we're here today at St Mark's to look at the east window, which
Yes.
is dedicated to the fallen, just behind you. Could you tell me a bit about the window, why it was dedicated and when?
The window, I think, was dedicated in 1922 as in response to an outcry, shall I say, from all the local people who were concerned that the death of so many from this particular parish had not been recorded at that time. And obviously it was subscriptions by all the neighbours, friends, relatives of all those who died that enabled the purchase of the east window in its entirety to be put up at that time in 1922.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about the symbolism of the window?
Well, the symbolism is obviously a dedication because of the First World War, but the main theme is of Christ as the royal warrior, which obviously obtains, covers, shall I say, the central feature of Christ in authority with his royal robes and sceptre of authority and sword of justice in his hands. And obviously alongside him are depicted the patriarchs of the forebears, the major prophets, the evangelists are all depicted on there instead. And right in the centre at the bottom are the members of the armed forces who obviously took part in the First World War. And it's in their memory, and the words on the inscription on there obviously depict that and say that is what it's for, to the memory of all those who died in that war.
Would you be able to actually read, and it's fine if you want to
Yes,
turn around
yes.
and see it,
No, that's
to
okay.
read the inscription for us?
Thine, O Lord, is the victory, in proud and honoured memory of our brothers who died in the war 1914 to 1918. Thine, O Lord, is the victory is part of the Bible passage from Revelation that was used for the purposes. Obviously this was after the Armistice Day of 1918, and so it was just depicting the fact that we had come through that war without being defeated or neither had Germany actually, but you know, that was it. That was part of it. But that's the symbolism is obviously biblical, as you would expect in a church. Now there also was a tablet which listed all the men who died from this parish, which is on one of the walls of our transept as well, in a separate wooden tablet where all the names of those who fell are listed there.
And is there anybody else, any of the other saints or any of the other figures depicted that you'd like to tell us a bit about? Why you think those in particular were chosen?
I think we've covered most of them, and obviously the patriarchs, the four major saints of George, and David, and Patrick and Andrew, depicted in the bottom lights as well. The others, as we say, are all the prophets and the servicemen of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force are all on there.
Thank you. And do you know when the window was dedicated in the 20s? Was there a particular service? Presumably there was some kind of...
Yes, there was, yeah. There was a special service of dedication, and that was when it was unveiled at that time. And obviously certain features of the church were added later. The reredos that you can see here was only added later in 1927. So, you know, the 1922 marked the first part of it. Some of the insignificant details was, originally there was a blue frontal that covered the backing gear with a blue curtain. And around the side of where the window was, the east window, were the Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer, which were taken down and we still have in the tower. The original board itself, yeah.
And do you yourself have anybody that you would like to talk about today, any ancestors that fought in the First World War?
Well, my grandfather, who was a previous church warden at this church, actually fought at Gallipoli with the 5th Manchester Regiment that left from Wigan area. And he was injured out there and obviously was brought back to this country and recovered to become the church warden of this church right up until his death in 1956.
And do you know any details about when he actually enlisted or where he was recruited?
Not specific details. Obviously, he was my grandfather. I've got a photograph in my possession that he carried with him when he went, which depicted his wife and the first 5, I think it was, of his children, all sat round the mother, and he kept that with him. But he came back and added another 7, I think it was, children.
It's a big family, isn't it?
12 of them all together, 7 brothers and 3 sisters.
And do you know, so he was at Gallipoli, do you know, did he ever speak about the actions that he was in, or did he ever speak about his daily life?
Not to my knowledge, no.
No.
Sadly, my last memory and last abiding memory was that actually I'd just been called up for national service in the RAF, and I was home for a weekend, and my father told me to go and see my grandfather, who was in hospital at that time, but that I may not be able to see him again. And of course I went, and actually when I was at the hospital, he actually died while I was there. And the youngest of his sons came just after he died, and I was able to tell him the details then.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you would like to say, either about your family's experiences or about what you think about the importance of the dedicated window in the church? Anything else you'd like to add? It's fine if there is.
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything else I can add that will add to what's already there, and to know that generations since have seen the window, whether they realise that it was the war memorial rather than the tablet which lists the names of all the men who died. But surely everyone who's been to St Mark's or who's grown up in St Mark's will know the content, shall I say, of the window. Perhaps not in detail, but they will know this figure of Christ in the middle in his red robe and wonder what the vine is that's wrapping around him. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is an interview by Linda Jackson with Jean Peet on the 5th of August 2014 at St Mark's Church, Newtown. Jean, can you start by giving me your full name, date and place of birth?
Right, Jean Margaret Peet, formerly Carruthers, was born where I am now, 7th of the 10th, 42. So I've never moved out of that house.
And can you tell me who in your family fought in the First World War?
My father, Harold Carruthers.
And do you know his date and place of birth as well?
The 26th of October, 1897. I think he was born, I know he was brought up at the corner of Westminster Street and Ormskirk Road in Newtown. His father was a cabinet maker and coffin maker. His mother was one of the teachers at St Mark's, Matilda Carruthers.
And do you know have you got any family stories or anything about when he actually enlisted or when he was recruited?
He says that he enlisted before he was 18, so we think it was he must have been either just nearly 17 or 17, well before he should have done.
And do you know which regiment he enlisted?
He was in the Liverpool Scottish part of the Manchester Regiment.
And do you know anything about where he was posted or anything about his experiences?
Well, he went to the Somme, but is also in Gallipoli as well. But he tells a story of being imprisoned next to the cathedral in Berlin. How he got there, we don't know. We think he was court-martialed for some reason. We don't know what it was, but never said what it was. But he was proud that he was actually a prisoner next to the cathedral. I don't know what made it more important being next to the cathedral. But he actually was wounded. He had shrapnel in his left leg and was brought back to England. And one of the station officers at the time said, "Where are you from, lad?" And he said, "Oh, we're going near Manchester." He said, "Well, tell him you're from Aberdeen and you get posted nearer home." And he finished up at Crumpsall Hospital.
Right. This is very close by. Did he ever speak to you about his experience or what daily life was like?
No, all he said that he was surrounded by water, blood and bullets. but he didn't describe anything that went on at all. He lost a bit of his faith through it, but it did deter him from, when the Second World War came on, he enlisted in the Home Guard and was stationed around this area, and was on duty when the bomb dropped at Goose Green. And onwards he went from to the Southport doing his manoeuvres every Sunday with the Home Guard until they demolished.
Did he tell you anything about that, the Goose Green?
No, I was a baby then apparently, and was then what we call the settee. And when the actual bomb dropped, apparently it came with such a force that I fell off the settee. But he was on duty in the Goose Green area, but he didn't say much about that either.
And when he returned from the First World War, what was his job then?
He went then as a railway clerk with British Rail. Well, it was London, Liverpool, Scottish at the time, and he was stationed at the All Central Station in Wigan.
So have you got any other family stories about his time in service?
No, we didn't speak very much about it at all. No.
And was he? Well, it sounds like he was obviously very deeply affected by what he'd seen when he was there. How do you feel now, kind of looking back on his wartime experience?
I just think those lads were remarkable, and I think it's probably a good job they didn't know what they were going out to, because I don't think they'd have gone. You know, I think it's a remarkable thing that nobody knew what was going to happen. I don't think the government at the time knew what it was going to be involved. You know, and when we look at our servicemen today, at least there is some correspondence with the loved ones left at home. But then they went and left everyone, the brothers and the sisters and the wives and their mothers, with nothing really. You know, and but I think there became a community spirit then as well, that everybody relied on one another. So I think they got some emotional feelings from their neighbours.
Some support.
And I think the church was more involved then with supporting them, because at least every member of the church would have had someone that was either been buried or was out there fighting. So there was support within the church as well at the time.
And did your mother ever speak about the First World War or anything about what Wigan was like?
No, it was. I don't know. It was more or less a closed secret at the time. Whether they didn't want to unburden, because you had the British bulldog effect then, didn't you? The stiff upper lip, and if you brought your feelings down, then you weren't a man anymore. And I think the time has now gone full circle, where people can actually talk about their experiences. But at the time, I don't think men felt they could do that. It was more a shame if they did unveil and cried.
No, I think that's true of a lot of people that we've spoken to, that they never spoke about the war after they returned. And that's probably most of my questions, really. If you've got anything else you want to add or anything else you want to say.
No, not really, no.
Okay. Well,
No. Fortunately, he had two brothers. One went out and came back, but the other brother was too young at the time, and he became one of the school teachers at St Mark's as well. So Donald was reprieved.
no, lucky for him, wasn't it? Do you know anything about your uncles? What your uncle was?
No, I don't really know. No, I don't know which regiment he served in at all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.